Welcome. I'm Debbie Rosas, and this is Get In, a podcast dedicated to conversations with real people whose lives have been transformed through movement, through NIA, and through lots of other modalities. I love having conversations about how to feel good. This is what NIA has been dedicated to since 1983. How do we get in our body? And how do we learn to empower ourselves to make choices to stay healthy and well? I'm thrilled today to be talking to somebody who has truly embraced the NIA practice in a very transformative way, Dave Herndon. Now, this is a story of a man's journey of movement, of flow, and of healing. Now, Dave is a man who had a journey that began back in Santa Fe in 2011. Let's go back, right? He was drawn to NIA, he says, because of the joy and because of the energy. Now, where did he feel this and sense this joy and energy? No, he wasn't peeking into a window. He was in a class, or in a studio, I should say, where he walked by this room. Body was the studio in Santa Fe. And he felt something coming from these people. What were they having? He wanted more of it. He described that, like many people, he was in a job that was full of stress, a demanding job, a state government. He describes it as a place loaded with toxic energy. Well, I think all of us have some kind of relationship with what does that mean to feel like you're surrounded or affected by toxic energy. For Dave, he says that NIA became a refuge, a way, and he uses this word, to survive, right? We're not just meant to survive, we're meant to thrive. But he said it was a way to help him survive when he was navigating that stressful and chaotic job, that environment. But his story, it really didn't end there. He moved to France and he was facing isolation, uncertainty. And as he said, NIA remained an anchor. I want to hear more about that for sure. And then when he returned to Santa Fe, Studio NIA in Santa Fe became, as he says, his Flow Dojo. Now, dojo is a place. It's a word that means a place to come to practice. And in NIA, what's a practice? About body and life. How can we live on the field of our life, play the game of our life and win? Well, flow motion, that sensation of ease, dynamic ease, is critical to having that happen. Dave's journey is a powerful example to all of us how movement and mindfulness, they intersect. Dave is now at that same studio NIA Santa Fe. He's a facilitator of NIA FreeDance. I see Dave as a healer, and he brings a unique and grounded perspective to everything that he does. Now, I have had the privilege of working with Dave. He's a wordsmith of the best kind, and he has helped formulate the language that many of you have been privileged to study and use to learn NIA, the art of sensation, and go on further into what we call the NIA code. Thank you so much, Dave, for joining us. And I am so privileged to have you here. Tell everybody a little bit about your background in terms of your education, writing, and journalism. I find that writing is one of the most important ways to get in touch with flow motion, I guess I would say.
Well, I never looked at it like that, but yeah. I am one of the lucky people who always knew what they wanted to do from an early age, and just was able to um, pursue my interest in writing and communicating and meeting people and telling their stories and collaborating with other journalists. I was like an editor for most of my career, so I was kind of a facilitator for writers, and very conscious of what the effect of that writing and communication and visual storytelling was having on the readers, and just trying to be really clear and really meaningful. Um, so, yeah, I never thought about what you just said, that writing is somehow related to the NIA process. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, well, as a writer myself, I've had friends say, did you get in the flow? Did you find your flow? And I know what it's like to put mind, hand into some sort of a writing process to take from inside what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm sensing, and somehow to be able to put that on paper. I think that takes a great skill. You've got training, you've got a master's in journalism, one of the most prestigious places. And I believe that you're, as you say, I've always known what I've wanted to do. Having worked with you personally, the level of intimacy that you create and care, wanting to make sure that my words through you are elevated, right? That takes a real connection. That takes a flow motion between two human beings. And so I see that what you do with writing on paper is exactly what you do with what I call body calligraphy writing on the dance floor, getting people to really find that story inside of themselves, as you say.
I
And
I I can see another connection now that we're talking about this is I spend probably an inordinate amount of time on my playlists.
uh-huh.
And it's very, and so the process of creating a focus and intent and a playlist for a freelance class is very similar. It's another version of the creative process. And so then the flow cycle is similar no matter what kind of creative process you're involved in. There's starts with struggle, right?
That chaos.
Yeah, what's going to unlock this? What am I trying to teach here? What experience am I going to try to create? What's the underlying message? What's the focus, and what's the intent? And how can I express that in the words that I use at the beginning of a class? I try to keep it short. One of the pearls that I picked up from Jody when I did the freelance training was, the right playlist can do most of the talking for you. And so, so I kind of create that experience, try to and try to create it for the people, the participants, um, through the crafting of the playlist. And
Yeah.
it does take, the reason I say an inordinate amount of time, because some people can just slot songs in, and it would take them 20 minutes to do a playlist. I honestly might spend 10 hours
Wow.
on one playlist.
Well, see, that's
Just
that sensitivity. That's that masters of journalism. That's attention to the detail. Knowledge becomes a foundation. Carlos and I used to say, you want to create a vertical experience. You're always going to stand on the foundation that you have. And that foundation should become more knowledge, right? And so then every time you create this vertical experience, with that more knowledge, two things can happen. You can move faster or it could slow you down because you're looking at the attention to the detail, which is what I think you're doing. Now, for the listeners that may not be familiar with what we're talking about here, we're talking about free dance, which is one of the NIA techniques programs, part of NIA movement art. And it is a practice that really relies on music. The movement is unstructured, but yet it's guided. So I can describe what it is, but I want to hear you tell the audience what is free dance and what makes it so different in the way we structure the class
Yeah.
from other
Um,
conscious dance practices.
yeah. Well, the one of the first pearls of free dance is that anything goes movement wise. And I try to make, especially new people, very comfortable with that. I say, a lot of people have a barrier. They prefer to have choreography. They prefer to be told what to do.
Uh-huh.
Um, um, so there's that. So I always kind of guide people at the beginning to say anything goes, and that do you play golf?
Um,
Practice your golf swing.
yeah.
If you
Yeah.
if you do you play tennis? Do forehands and backhands, which are not that different from cross front. If you think about adding a swing to your cross fronts, you can incorporate tennis moves and do one of the 52 moves. But so I approach it as a real mind as the mindfulness practice it is. And I don't know how conscious this was on your part and the collaborators that when you developed freedance, but it really does um, map on to the mindfulness of starts with mindfulness of body. Let's arrive. Let's get here. In fact, I have coined a term that I prefer, especially in this context, is bodyfulness. I call it because what we're really trying to do is stop thinking, sort of short circuit our mind for a little while at first, so that we can, when we come back into it, it's with clarity and without self consciousness. But so we start with um, getting people into their body, and I use like the FAMs, the flexibility, agility, mobility, strength, and stability to get people real conscious of, you know, the the physical aspect of it and to get warmed up. And I usually start by scaffolding from, the feet on up, as we do in some other versions of Nia practice. But the feet, the ankles, the knees, the joints of the hips, the core, the shoulders, the head, the neck, and that really gets people into their bodies. And
Yeah,
then
you're really bringing up an important aspect of any kind of experience, and that's form and freedom. That's having a structure. And so, free dance as a conscious dance practice, I love how you really are reminding everyone that the conscious dance we're talking about is really turning this off and turning on the sensory wisdom. So I call it sense seeing, sense hearing, sense thinking, right? So the sensation. And the four parts of the class provide a structure to spend time with what we call 8 different circuits, 8 different experiences. Spend time noticing your mind in relationship to sensation, and then body sensation, and then emotions, and then spirit, what's unique to you. Those 4 parts that make us human. I know as a freelance facilitator, I love being able to keep my focus and my language facilitation around that, knowing that I'm guiding the students on the dance floor to become conscious of something through sensation that they may not have been paying attention to. And as you so beautifully said, the underlying force that stimulates every human being is resonance and sound, and that putting together a playlist that has, as you described, flow, seamless continuity. That seamless continuity can take the vibration up or take it down, but there's a way that songs blend that affect all of the 7 chakras, the energy body, the light body of somebody, as well as their breathing and their their body tissues that move their bones and their joints. And I love how you mentioned that that playlist is the force, the vibration, more than anything that comes out of your mouth, the most important force that people are moving and dancing to. You
Right,
talk
and we
about
can
Coulter's flow theory. How does
yeah,
that fit in? How does that theory fit into what you do as a freelance facilitator?
yeah. So Stephen Kotler is an author who has, sort of expanded on the work of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who is the the scientist who kind of named flow, and and there's that we've already touched on it a little bit, the flow cycle. First of all, flow is, it's like what athletes call being in the zone, or where things are happening naturally and you're not thinking about it and you're performing at your best and you're unselfconsciously, it's all just happening. And he says flow feels flowy, which is it's just like it's its own definition, right?
Right.
So I think anybody who practices Nia knows what I'm talking about, because um, that's how I mapped on this flow theory onto Nia, because it was already there.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I just recognized that it's the same thing, and it is this, this warm up period. This, maybe there's a little period of struggle because you're feeling self conscious, or your 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 joints are tight, your neck is tight, you're anxious because what happened at work today, or whatever. Um, and then at 20 minutes into that warm up, there's usually, there's neurochemical and biochemical and hormonal things that happen,
Mhm.
um, that you can feel the warm up gives way to, oh, wow, now it's on. And that's a function of our evolutionary psychology, because hunter gatherers had this reward system for, keep going, right? You got you got to you got to keep going after the prey, or whatever it is that you're hunting and gathering. So we do have that reward system built in. So now, um, we can talk about other flow triggers, like, the emotions that we bring into, the feeling. We talk about, once we do establish ourselves in the body, we establish our feelings, and emotions are flow triggers, and they bring us right into the now. And so that's the sort of what the second phase of the free dance practice is. And
Yeah, the word conscious dance, I think people sometimes get confused. They think, "Oh, I'm gonna be paying attention to my dance." When in reality, the conscious dance we're talking about is stepping out of the way and letting the body as a consciousness dance.
right,
And this consciousness, this body consciousness, when you're in that flow motion, you find yourself saying, "Okay, I got it." Right? It's when things line up. I love to invite students to say out loud, "I've got it," when they sense the sensation of that coherence, the synchronicity, the connection of one thing to another,
yeah,
creating a flow. It's like waiting and you've got static, and all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, I can hear you now." Right?
yeah.
And it's
So
that kind of thing that we're
and
looking.
I first sensed it in classic Nia, as like, at some point it became, during this class, at this stage, when I'm talking about this 20-minute stage, basically, where it goes from feeling like I'm trying to follow the instructions of the teacher and get the moves right and everything. It goes from that sort of exercise to feeling like a dance. Like and the switch flips, and now we're in it, and now I'm landing on the same, one as the teacher. I'm anticipating it, and and then I'm starting to share that feeling with the others around me. And that's when there's a lot of scientific technical explanation of all this. What we're talking about is, you know kind of disengaging the prefrontal cortex and going into a state of what they call transient hypofrontality, where things slow down a little bit and become a little, because you're not thinking, you're shutting off the executive function, you're getting into the flow. And then in FreeDance, we move into, um, now that we have kind of cleared the mind, now we can return to the mind and start to say, okay, what do we do? What can I do creatively that makes me feel even better, or try something new, and to then go into the struggle phase again. So it's not a big struggle, but it's like the opportunity is to, we try to get people, you know, out of their habit dance, and to try something new and just experiment, and then find what clicks, and then go with that. Now you're really flowing in this kind of, in a sense of almost self-realization. You're mastering this now, and you're and the real, um, kind of ultimate payoff of all that is not just the self-realization and self-actualization, but the last phase of the class for me is, the part where we have the opportunity to, get out of ourselves, and to, transcend ourselves, and to feel spirit, and whatever that means to you, a connection to the divine, whatever that means to you, a connection to the universal life force that is intrinsic to Nia practice, the sense of communal, then the communal spirit of the group flow, which is another, aspect of flow for, creative teams or sports teams or any kind of team. We experience that all the time at Studio Nia.
Yeah.
And it's really getting even beyond yourself. That's the real kind of payoff and the opportunity of, it's not just FreeDance. I mean, even, classic Nia or other styles
Well,
of Nia
yeah,
have the
moving,
same.
moving,
Yeah,
moving in your
and,
body. You
with
brought up
other people. Yeah.
you brought up a really good point, and that is some people feel safer with choreography, and some people feel safer without choreography. So there's that form and freedom blend. And when it comes to creativity, it's interesting how many people will say, "Oh, I'm not creative. I'm not an artist." When the fact that you're here in this human body is a representation that you're extremely creative. You've created yourself, right? Who you are. Um, and I know that for me and freedance, it was the opportunity to drop all of the identity that I had, drop all of the things that I thought I did well, um, and let go of the concept of what creativity means and where does creativity come from? Where does it emerge? Thinking outside of the sandbox, playing outside of the sandbox, right? And beginning to explore, as you said, movement diversity, different movement options, different ways of not only expressing movement, but maybe connecting to one's feeling to the movement. And I find that when someone finds that doorway into I am creative, I do have my own unique way of moving and expressing myself. When they do come into the choreographed classic Nia class, there's a different sense of that person moving inside their body. There's a different way they inhabit their body. I'm going to call it more ownership, more respect, more cooperation, more compatibility. Have you seen that as well? And do you feel that happened for you?
Well, one of the things that you're talking about is, that's another piece of the flow spectrum, and a flow trigger is intrinsic motivation. So if you can get, it's not like I have never felt I need to go to a Nia class. Like I always feel like, oh, I need to go to the gym, whether I feel like it or not. I have the intrinsic motivation to go to a Nia class because I know even if I don't feel energetic right now, I know that the practice will give me energy, will give me some joy, will relieve my stress, will, it just feels good, Debbie.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell you.
Well,
And so,
intrinsic motivation is so deeply tied to meaning and purpose. And, in NIA, we follow the health ease continuum. This is a theory coined by Aaron Anastovsky. And rather than looking at disease, it looks at health ease. And flow motion is deeply tied to health ease and a continuum. And the three elements that are important in that health ease continuum, and they're also important for a FreeDance facilitator or a NIA technique teacher. You're observing your students and you want to make sure, number one, do they understand what we're going to do? Have I expressed it clearly, provided enough information? And then manageability, understandability, manageability. Can they manage it? Am I providing enough language and guidance that will allow them to personalize and manage everything they're doing? And then the last one is meaning and purpose. Have I provided language so everybody can look inside and say to themselves that the meaning and purpose for me showing up here in this class is this because I have an intrinsic need that's being fed. Now, I always say my need is for my movement. Why do I move? I want to be able to get up and down from the toilet, in and out of the bathtub till the day I die by myself. So that's my intrinsic motivation.
100%.
What's your intrinsic motivation nowadays? I mean, you've got so much
Yeah.
knowledge. What drives
Yeah.
you?
Well, so in terms of I'm going to frame it in terms of my freelance guiding. Okay, so
Okay.
and because there's a spectrum there too. Um, what you're talking about is either explicit or implicit as you guide people through the class, and I find that a lot of people don't want a lot of verbal guiding.
Uh-huh.
People that come from a conscious dance have experienced conscious dance before. Um, they don't want to hear a lot of talking from the facilitator, and that goes back to why I think my playlists are my superpower. But I will have set a focus and intent, and I will do different reminders of it, and I will come back to it, and try to have a completion about that. And that goes back to what we were talking to about having trying to tell some kind of story or impart some kind of share some kind of wisdom that I've received from you and the other teachers, and passing on, and creating experiences that way. So I guide regularly on for the first Friday and the third Friday of the month. So Friday nights, the people that come, they have worked 45, 50-hour work weeks. They are, yeah, and they want they on Friday, what they really want is to let go. They want to have they really want to have an upbeat playlist. They want to have, it's like happy hour. It's like it's their reward for the end of the work week, and it's a pivot to the weekend. So, I'll do a completely different kind of playlist for that than I would do for when I sometimes sub for Kate Latimer on Sundays, sometimes for Soulful Sunday, which is at 9 o'clock in the morning on Sundays. A completely different type of playlist, a completely different approach by me. It's kind of for me, it feels it's deeper. There's, and I feel for the people that come, it's more of an introspective experience. Um, and that I point this out just for the when we talk about the intrinsic motivation. there are people that would like this kind of free dance, or people that would like that kind of free dance, and some people would like both kinds of free dance. But there is a very those are kind of polar opposites, you know. Um, so, and I love them both. Um, and
Well, that's
so,
what you're talking about is, um, addressing the need, right? Need. Friday night, I really need to, like, just blow it off, right? I've been working all week. And then need, Sunday. I'm preparing for the next week. I'm gonna go intrinsic a little bit. I'm gonna quiet down a little bit, and that doesn't mean that Kate's not gonna have some rockin' music, in the playlist as well. But it really is recognizing, which is a very important professional aspect of delivering a product, looking at your market need and fulfilling that. So people come expecting something on Friday, you deliver it. They come expecting something on Sunday, you deliver it. And equally important, the words that you use on a website or on a flyer brochure to describe that. So when people show up, they go, "What?" Or they go, "Oh yeah, that's what it said I was gonna get." That's really, really an important part. Um,
right.
do you feel that when you do use language to guide and you have the playlist and your words become another instrument in that playlist, do you feel that your language not only points people in a certain direction, directing their attention somewhere. So they may have been out and it directs their attention. Do you think it helps people um, stop their inner critic?
Well, that's definitely part of the process. You mean that's kind of what the one of the subtexts of what we've been talking about the whole time. Yeah. You know, my my freelance guiding name is DJ Dave, and that's not just creating the playlist, but like as a DJ, I might interject and talk over or repeat lyrics or even sing along a little bit.
Uh huh.
I get into a flow myself, and then I'm modeling, the flow, and I'm sort of um br- bringing people along with me. And so, yeah, that's another little piece of the puzzle. Now, the things that I might be doing on Friday night might be, you know, jamming with James Brown, and
Yeah.
and Sunday, be something, much more meditative, but that has messages that I want to amplify by, what I can say and just repeat and sort of highlight the message that I've baked into the playlist already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you describe is how important it is for a facilitator to be in the now, not just help your students drop into the now body, which is the felt sense of now. It only can happen in now time. And that in that now time, there's a sense of timelessness. And I know that in their classes, people have said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe the class is already over." It's not that you get lost, but there's a timelessness that happens through that flow, that interconnectivity of everything. So it's not start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, but it starts and it expands and it may contract and it can span, but it stays as sensations that come and go, and things fade in and things fade out. And that fading in and out is how we get to really experience the flow of our life force, which is a flow of the twin energies of yin and yang. They don't leave home without each other. They're not separate. You cannot separate them. But, I would imagine that when you're putting your playlist together, you're very sensitive of the yang out and the yin in, the yang out and the yin in. Is that a fact?
Well, and, I would just to really label it really broadly, I would say my Friday classes are yang and my Sunday classes are yin. But,
Mhm. Mhm.
but they of course, that's there's that, integration. Um, but you put your finger on something, timelessness, that's one of the, the key 4 or 5 characteristics of flow state is this sense of timelessness. I also think it's, worthwhile mentioning that there's a flow spectrum. We don't get all the way into that state in every class.
Right.
Uh, I mean, I think I only teach a couple of classes a month, so I think I have a pretty good batting average because I'm so focused on those playlists and what I'm trying to teach. Um, but, and it's all good, like, if you go to a classic Nia class or whatever, in the middle of the day, you might not get all the way to this sense of timelessness and unity that I feel are very available in FreeDance classes.
Well,
Um,
it's sort of like, when do all the planets line up? Not very often, right? But there is that moment where things line up and we have I'm gonna call it a peak experience. And most humans will seek that peak experience again, and they may not get there. Why? Every experience is different. Every single experience is different. And that's where breaking the habit, not going back to what you think you want, but really being in this beautiful place of beginner's mind, which is
yes.
one of the most powerful positions anybody in the process of creativity can take,
Yeah.
to enter into beginner's mind, to really let go, have a clean slate, clean piece of paper, hands on the keys, what's going to come, right? And that's that standing on the foundation. You have one class, that's a foundation for the next class, and you stand there. But you won't want to stand with a whole bunch of stuff on your shoulders and in your head. You want to stand in that place of emptiness. And as you said, guided by that intrinsic motivation and without control. You know, um, the sense of dynamic ease and flow motion and things are effortless. In many ways, that's the best kind of control you can have. Why? Well, you're connected inside and outside to everything. And it's almost like driving a car. There's so much that you can pay attention to, but in that flow motion, it's all there and it's all being orchestrated, not by control, but by release and relaxation.
Creating a space for freedom. I mean, I feel like that once we're getting into like the third phase of the hour of an hour long class, that the real creative space and I try to track in about an 8 or 9 minute instrumental that is kind of might be trancy or tribal or and I'll say, explicitly, here's your chance, during this class to just go deep. I'm not going to say anything for the next, the duration of this track. And, you might want to close your eyes. You might want to just here's the chance to, get what you came for in terms of your own personal movement practice and your whatever your journey is here and what your own personal focus and
People
intent
will
here is.
ask me all the time, how do you create choreography? Is well, there's some skill that you need to develop, and there's some knowledge that you need to develop. And the first thing that you need to do is put on the music and free dance.
That's
to
it.
go back into what you were talking about, to stop the thinking and go into the sensing, and sensing the rhythm, the melody, and harmony, the pulse of the music, to become to be moved by the music, and to recognize where you're being stimulated to move in your body. Are you being stimulated to move the base of your body? Are you being stimulated in your spine? Are you being stimulated in your head? Where? And that is a direct representation of what chakra is being stimulated. And every chakra in the body is stimulated by a key and a chord. And so putting together a well-developed playlist respects that. So you don't have a playlist that's all in the key of B or that's all in the key of C, but that it moves through. And this is something that when you experience a playlist like that, you come out and you feel whole, stimulated, and relaxed, versus a playlist that is not sonically well put together. It's like getting a massage where they only massage the shoulder. And you're like, but what about the rest of my body? It's the same thing. What about my whole body and the light body, the energy body of our chakras and our ethereal layers? They create the vibration that then affects us on a physical level, our organs, our tissues, etc. And that's where that playlist is so very important, and the in a sense, a flow cycle, right? Not just flowing from base corporate extremities or from mind into body, emotion, spirit, but also moving through the chakras. It doesn't have to start out at chakra 1. It can start out anywhere, but it's walking out and feeling like you've had that whole energy massage through sound, vibration, and resonance, which it sounds like you do,
Yeah.
taking people through that, uh, through the gateway of sound into the vibration and flow of life force energy in their body. How do you set a focal point when you say, I do, set my have a playlist? How do you set a focal point, or what we call a focus and intent for the class?
Well, that's part of I have a meditation practice. Sometimes I guide mindfulness classes. So, um, for me, it's these practices are intrinsically interwoven. So, the focus will often come out of some aha moment that I've had in what I might be reading, in the mindfulness realm. Um, it might come from something that I'm reading in the newspaper. Like, I mean, I've picked up a couple of articles from the New York Times that are sort of, one of them was reporting on a scientific study about groove. And it was actually, I hope they didn't spend too much money on this study, but it was, but it was sort of, it spoke about the groove in these, scientific terms of, you know, music and rhythm and melody that makes you, instinctively makes you want to move your body. And okay, no shit. But, but so
Which is
that,
what
but I can,
all music does, right?
well, I am always trying to find music that it just really makes me want to move first, and so I'm looking for the groove, and I want to share the groove. But I can share. I can say that the focus and the intent for this class. The focus is on the groove, and the intent is to feel the joy of movement that comes from it. It can be as simple as that. But to so I can set the focus and the intent by quoting from this article, whether even if it sounds silly, but um, it might. It just gives me a way to start talking about what gives us the intrinsic motivation
Yeah.
to move, and what we're here to feel, and why this music has been selected, and where, and then in the invitations, where to feel the groove. Do you feel, I often start with some sort of Latin music because, it just puts that groove straight into your hips. And it's like, that's a
Yeah,
really good place to start,
yeah.
to feel the universal life force. So yeah, so the inspiration for the focus and intent comes from my, you know, all this other stuff that I read and practice, but it's also part of the creative struggle, like finding it for this week. And when I know I'm teaching a week from today, and I know that as of Monday morning, this is going to be something that's very much on my mind,
Gotcha.
throughout the week.
Yeah,
Every morning I'll wake up and I'll be looking at playlists that I've dumped lots of music into, and I keep all kinds of different playlists. I keep a next Friday, batch of songs that's not a
yeah.
playlist yet. I keep a next Sunday batch of songs. I'm a very active listener. I keep feeding that, because I always want to use new music and new playlists
Well,
as
this
much
is
as I
that
can.
what you're really talking about here, which is so why you fall into that mastery of teaching bucket. Um, you're walking the talk, you're living it, you're in it. It's not something, oh, I have to go do this. Again, it goes back to that intrinsic motivation. There's value in this. And you are focused on the now and pulling in, which is so important for NEA teachers. Where can I pull in some scientific information? What's happening now? Where can I pull that in? Feed my own brain with something new, novel, and fascinating to grow my own brain, and then share that knowledge with my students and use it to focus. Apply this cognitive concept onto the dance floor to validate its truth. Right? Which is what scientists do. We are sensation scientists, we say in NEA practitioners and dancers, students. We're sensation scientists. Our body's our laboratory. We're researching and validating what feels good to us through sensation. And we're observing through the felt sense, right? What works for us and what doesn't work for us, what feels good and what doesn't feel good. And this is how we deepen our knowledge and we deepen our skills. Mental health is such a big deal when you talk about going and reading something, going out and getting outside information, whether it be the New York Times or Psychology Today, or just looking at something on social media. Mental health is a big, big deal. Have you adapted NEA FreeDance in any way or within the teaching community at Studio NEA Santa Fe? Have you talked about this and come up with any strategies to deal with this? Since on the dance floor, where you're giving people the freedom to move and express, it can get out of control.
Um, yeah, I mean, I haven't had any bad experiences, happen in class, but I would say from my own personal, journey into NIA, I used it a lot for anxiety relief and stress control very self-consciously. I mean, if I was having a bad morning, which was often, I would know that if I went to a noon class with Kelly, I would have a better afternoon, and, I'd be more productive, and the things that seemed insurmountable problems in the morning were things that I could just handle in the afternoon. So, on just a very practical level of day in, day out, um, performance. A lot of that having to do with emotional regulation, psychological regulation, etc. Um, so I am 100% conscious and appreciative of the NIA practice as part of my mental health toolkit. It goes far beyond, you know exercise. and
Well,
then
it's a given, in that we're human, right? And we have feelings and emotions, and we have thoughts and ideas and opinions, right? And we will, to the best of our ability, do what we can do to feel like we're in control. And learning to be self responsible for one's emotions and to navigate and not project that responsibility onto someone else. That requires knowledge, education. For some people that have never even thought, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was doing that. I was projecting. I didn't know I wasn't taking in that self responsibility.
right,
Certainly today, with people's stress levels higher, anxiety levels higher, depression higher, the feeling of overwhelm for people just in general. It's funny, I went to the doctor yesterday for my yearly checkup, and the nurse practitioner says, have you felt depressed in the last week? I went, yeah. I watched the new. I said, I know what you're talking about. I know the kind of depression you're talking about. But yeah, I don't know how anybody today does not feel more extreme highs and lows, and not having tools. I can't imagine how some people are attempting to navigate. And I used to get really bugged by people using social media um, to project their outbursts and their rage and their anger, regardless who it's toward. And then I realized that in many ways, that is opening the valve of what's inside of them. And what would happen if they didn't even have that resource, right? Because it's
right.
it's like instead of going to the psychologist and saying this, it's like people are going online and using social media to express that. And Nia talks a lot about pleasure. The law of polarity is that there's pain and pleasure, right? You can't ignore. Now, the discomfort is meant to wake us up, make us more aware, help us make different choices and decisions, and to create a more welcoming space in our internal environment and external environment to be more loving, kind, caring, compassionate, empathetic. And I find that on the dance floor, when we can learn to do that for our own body, I believe it can help transmit to the external world. And yet there are those people that are just struggling so much that they're while we may look at their outburst as dysfunctional or wrong, and there's a part of me that's like, at least they have that space to release it, right?
We haven't talked yet about the importance of the community. Like I'm very fortunate to be i- i- part of the Studio Nia Santa Fe community. There are a lot of people in the healing professions, the mental health professions, body workers, et cetera, that are members of our community. What does that tell you? It says that, these are people that know how to take care of themselves and find in the practice and in the community an anchor and a way to when whether you're mourning something or whether you're celebrating something,
Yeah.
you can go do it with people that in this sort of third place environment of the studio that really does um, you know, there's because so many people don't even work in offices anymore, um,
Right.
so much, there's some epidemics of loneliness and we Studio Nia is the antidote and the solution to that, and it's such a wonderful resource, and we do have a lot of people who join us online.
Yeah, right.
And so our community extends to, the Zoomers. And I always, whenever I'm in class, I make sure that I go and dance in front of the in studio camera, so that I can, dance with the Zoomers.
I like
And
that.
that
I haven't heard the term Zoomers. I like that.
we call them we call them the Zoom Nation of
That's great. It's great.
um,
Community
yeah.
connection, so deeply important. And, uh, through Nia, right? We say through Nia we find health. Well, Nia, what do we mean? Your Nia into your own body, into your own life. That connection is so important. And what I love about the Nia community is how diverse it is. And yes, we don't have enough Black and Brown and marginalized communities yet. And that's just the way it is. But the intention is to be as inclusive as we can with every human body. So, regardless of color or shape or size, and your community is a beautiful representation of this. And as you say, that reaching out beyond the walls through Zoomers, right? To create
Yeah.
Zoomer
Yeah.
community is so great. I think that that is how we evolve as people. And I think that's also how we help the work evolve. So, my last big question is, what's it like to be a man in Nia? All right. Now
Yeah.
this is an environment that generally attracts women, and whenever anybody hears there's a man in Nia, they get so excited, like they found gold, like they've been mining for gold, and they go, "My God, look, I found a nugget." What is that like?
Well, I mean, so the question is like, why are you, what's it like to be a unicorn? And I always say, why am I the only, why aren't there more unicorns? Um, that is, uh, it's, it's a privilege and a blessing for me. I gained so much, feminine wisdom from this community and from, the teachers and from the other people that get attracted to this practice. Um, it's, I just feel, it sensitizes me. It makes me more, communicative in terms of, feelings and, you know, um, women are, just more attuned that way. So I get a lot of, um, I gain a lot of feminine, wisdom and knowledge, from that. And I just wish I could share this. I just wish more men didn't have the barrier to entry that whatever it is, that doesn't, you know, so they can't share this, good medicine that I feel very fortunate to be, tapped into and trying to share. Um, yeah. So
I think that, what you have to offer really is a way to support health and sustainability in a body as we age, for sure. At any age, but there's something about I want to be able to move, I want to be able to be functional, I want to be able to feel good. And I think that that's a huge message to put out in your community to men.
yes.
And, the invitation to think about this, that this is a very important medicine to keep yourself vital. Yeah.
Yeah, I recently brought a friend in, a man who, um, hasn't had a movement practice. He's a Grateful Dead head. We don't play
Uh-huh.
a lot of Grateful Dead in the studio,
That's great.
but I can see him working through his movement and getting more comfortable. And he always tells me how good it feels
Yeah.
afterwards. And um, so if we can just get past whatever the threshold is to get more men in the door, I think it'd be really good for them. And
Really good.
I
Well,
know I know there's a crying need for it.
yeah.
I'm a member of a local chapter of the Modern Elder Academy, and we have a circle conversation, and it's it's middle-aged people or early retirees or whatever. Some of them might be new in town. Everybody is expressing a need for community and fun and all this stuff. And
Connection.
I'm like, people,
Connection. Yep.
come to Studio Nia, come to FreeDance. But I got to say, I was really encouraged. I had coffee with a gentleman yesterday from this community, and I told him about this, you know, where this fits into my life and all that stuff. And I said, I used that line about the unicorns, like, why am I the only unicorn? He said, I'm going to conscious dance tonight. You want to come with me?
That's
so,
great.
so he, so, you know, by continuing to talk the talk and try to associate with people who might be inclined, to join in, I just want to just be the Pied Piper to
Keep
bring people
inviting.
into
Keep
Studio
inviting.
Nia. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dave. This has been wonderful. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and your experience, your story with all of us. If you would like to find more information about Dave Herndon, is it herndonatlarge@gmail.com? Is that the best, Dave?
That's my Gmail. Yeah.
Great. All right.
Yeah,
And
and the
beautiful.
Studio Nia Santa Fe
Absolutely.
.com is a good resource if you want to join the Zoom Nation there. I will be teaching a week from well, I don't know when this is going to
Well,
air.
they'll
So
be finding you
anyway,
because we're
the
gonna
first and third Fridays
be
of the month,
promoting this.
I try to make it.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for this wonderful conversation. You can find out more about me at debbierosas.com, and you can sign up to receive body and life, health, well-being, and fitness articles twice a week. They'll come right to you. Nia on Demand, if you're interested in experiencing this joy and this energy that Dave was talking about, 2 weeks free there, please. And also, you can find out more on Instagram and at Nia Technique. Remember, this is the most important time for us to get into our body and to get into meaningful, purposeful conversations. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.